All right. It's a bit later, and I'm going to do my spoiler video on Strange Darling. Earlier today, I recorded my thoughts on the movie, and I avoided giving away the twist because, as just about ever, I've watched a bunch of reviews on YouTube now, and just about everyone that I've seen is positive, and just about every one of them says the same thing, that it's better for you to know nothing, to know as little as possible going into this movie. And I did. I knew nothing about it except that I'd heard it had gotten some hype, and that it was a low budget movie that that was supposedly about a serial killer. And I'd seen some of the pics, but that was it. I didn't know anything else about it. And so this is a spoiler video, and this should only be watched by people who either have already seen the movie, or who don't plan to see the movie, or who think maybe they're going to see the movie but don't really care about the twist getting spoiled. Which again is not my recommendation for you, but it's your life. So you go ahead and do what you want to do. Or for people who know what the movie's about, know that it's bloody and gory and stuff, and that's just not the kind of movie you're into. So then you wouldn't really care. You might still be interested in hearing what the spoiler is, or what the spoilers are. There's really only one. There's one big spoiler, or one big twist, that I did not see coming. And it seems like it would be a very controversial twist in 2024, as I kind of alluded to in my prior video. So I'm a little surprised that there. I mean, I read over the, as I said, I read over the Rotten Tomato comments. I didn't no full reviews, but I read over the blurbs, and most of them, they were overwhelmingly positive. But there were a couple who didn't like it, and one called it problematic. So it's got to be good when a critic uses the word problematic to describe it. So that probably makes you eager to know what the twist is, or if you've seen the movie already, then you already know what the twist is. But I'm going to talk about it now. The movie, what's really brilliant about the movie, and I wouldn't say it's a deep movie, but it's a very well made movie. And maybe there are some things about it that are kind of deep, but mostly it's just a well made thriller movie. I think it's closer to being an action thriller, which is a little bloody and gory, than a horror movie per se. But I don't know. There's a fine line there. But the way it begins, it looks as though what we're shown at the beginning is, we're shown a man chasing after a woman, and she's driving this crappy little car, this little Pinto, and looking really frantic, and he's driving this big black pickup truck, and he looks determined, and he's like sniffing what looks like cocaine into his nostrils as he's driving, and he looks all crazed and everything. And so he's chasing after her. He's got a gun, and so you think from the beginning, obviously, what's going on. Oh, there's a little bit at the beginning where they say the talk about a serial killer. This movie charts the course of this particular serial killer during the serial killer's last few days, and talks about several locations, and they end up in Oregon. That's the final. It's quite pretty. The scenery is quite nice. So so we get from the bit at the beginning that it's about a serial killer, and then we see a man, crazed-looking man with a gun, driving down a country road, at furious speed, chasing after this woman who looks really frightened and helpless, and who's bleeding. We see one shot of her running through the field, and she's like part of her ear is missing, and it's a bloody mess on the side of her ear. So she's definitely the hunted. He's definitely the hunter, and so we think he's the killer, and she's his would-be victim. And again, it dumps you into the story in the middle of the story. So it starts off by saying that this is there are 6 chapters, and it begins with chapter 3, which is kind of cheeky, and it might annoy some people, but I thought it was funny. And I do really like non-linear movies, or non-linear storytelling. I think can be really interesting if it's done right. Again, the go-to for me, what I always think of when I think of non-linear movies is Pulp Fiction. That was maybe the first one that I saw which really used its non-linearity to its advantage. It's what made it really cool. Part of what made it cool was that. So, because sometimes it's better to see the story unfold not in pieces, rather than it makes it more interesting as the viewer trying to put it all together. In this case, if we'd started from the beginning, we would know the twist before this point. But you start out here, and your perception is, oh well, the guy's the killer. Of course he is. Serial killers are male. Not always, but most of the time we think of serial killers as men. And and he's chasing this frazzled woman. So then he takes aim at her and shoots at her and doesn't hit her, but shatters her windshield, and then the car overturns, and he just comes at her just like without mercy. He tries to run her over. She gets out of the way, then he backs up, and he gets out, and he just looks like an unstoppable force. He's got his big gun on him. He's this big muscly guy with a mustache, and he looks very intimidating. Without going into the entire plot, what it turns out to be the case is he is not the serial killer. She is the serial killer. And what we find out when we're allowed the moment to put all the pieces together is that the movie began with them having or driving to a motel to have a sexual encounter, and even then it plays with our perception, because we see we see him get rough with her, and we think, there he goes. Well, it begins with her saying something like, women want to have fun just as much as men do. Women are into one night stands just as much as men are. Women like casual sex just as much as men do. But we have to worry about, is the guy going to kill us? And the guy says, I've never thought about that. And she said, of course you didn't. You're a man. So this looks like it's like like a feminist wagging her finger at the man, the standard kind of wokish stuff that we tend to see. Um, but that's all a ruse, and this is why I'm surprised that more people aren't flipping their wigs about this movie and getting really upset about it. It's all a ruse. I mean, she's reciting these feminist talking points about how insensitive men are, what assholes men are, and it turns out, she's saying, how do I know you're not a serial killer? And she's saying all this to toy with him because she is a serial. She knows that she's going to kill him. So she asks him to get rough with her, but we don't know that. We just see him getting rough and like chaining her up and then hitting her and threatening her and doing all these things. But it turns out that she has a safe word that she says, and then he stops, even though it looked before that like he was just being a brute, and that she was begging for him to stop, and he wouldn't stop. But then we find out she told him beforehand, look, I want to do this. I want it rough. And I'm going to beg for mercy. I'm going to plead that you stop and you do not stop and get as rough as you want, and choke me as hard as you can. And, until she says the safe word. She ends up, when she says the safe word, then he stops. And she's like, in this early scene, this would-be sex scene, because they never actually end up having intercourse, but there's a lot of foreplay, and there's a lot of manipulation. She's saying she wants this, and then she acts like she's not really into it, and then she says she wants to snort cocaine, and she gives him what looks like cocaine. And they both sniff it, and then she says she's not, and then again she starts running cold again on him, and he says, I've had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. And he leaves, or he tries to leave, but then it turns out that she's given him, what is it, ketamine? Is that the proper term? Some some kind of drug that just knocks you out. And so she's had cocaine, but he's just had this drug that it's a white powdery substance, but it totally immobilizes him. So she does stuff to him, but he's finally able to eventually fight back, when it looks like she's about to kill him, and then she runs away, and then he chases her. And so what we saw in the first scene is him giving chase to her after she tried to kill him. So and then we see her over the course of the movie. We see her killing a bunch of other people. It's there's one moment where she stabs, where one character says, "Oh, you're in danger. Let's call the police. We should call the police." And she says, "No, do not call the police." And that's the first time. This is before all this other stuff happened, and before it happens in the movie, not before it temporally. It's later on temporally, but we see this chapter before we see the earlier chapter where it's revealed that she's the killer. But she says, no, don't call the police. And then you sort of think, why doesn't she want the police to be involved? She's got some crazed killer chasing after her. That's what we thought. And she ends up stabbing this guy to death to keep him from calling the cops. And that's when we start to think, so maybe this is not quite what we thought it was in the first place. So there are all these things that in the movie that kind of refer to sexual politics in a way that I would think most right-thinking people out there would find problematic, because the movie shows us this female serial killer who uses who when she's being chased, or when she's actually in peril, but she's or looks like she's in peril, she appeals to other people by acting all helpless, or whatever, and they think, oh, a frazzled woman just running around in her bra and panties, with blood leaking out of her ear. This is terrible. She's obviously the victim, as any of us would think. But then she just is using that to to manipulate people and to get away so that she can kill more people. So eventually it gets revealed that she is a serial killer called the Electric Lady. And we don't really hear much about her besides that name. There's another scene where two police come upon her. One of them is a guy, one of them is a woman. And the guy is somebody who the hero, the one we thought the serial killer was at first, but it was actually the one who the serial killer is trying to kill. Where he finally has her where he thinks he wants her. Of course, that's not truly the end. There are a couple other twists before the final, the finale. But he calls this cop, who's I guess a friend of his, and this guy, this male cop, and this younger female cop come to the scene of the crime. They see that he's dead, and they see that she's just killed him. Okay, this is a spoiler. Brutally killed him. And we see how she does it, by biting him in, where in the, whatever that vein is that's in your neck, so that he just bleeds out. And so she sees, they come upon the two bodies. One of them is dead. She's there doing the helpless female act, saying, oh, he attacked me and blah, blah. But the guy's like, we don't know what happened. We don't know who the victim is. And of course he was friends with the guy who called him. So he's prejudiced in the favor of thinking that his friend is the good guy. But the woman says, don't you see what this obviously is? And, sort of plays that card. Like, again, it feels like a very naughty sort of transgressive thing about where it's sort of calling feminists to task for the assumptions that they have, and for the assumptions that they guilt others into having, about how men are the violent ones, and women are the only ones who get abused. But the policeman is saying, we don't know what happened here. But eventually he gets sort of guilted into taking her away, and so she's in the car. But then they in the police car, and they're driving her away. But then she, of course, finds out, or they find out eventually that she's the Electric Lady, and that when they find that out, when that phrase is used, it has an effect on both of them. They both know who the Electric Lady is, but as has been pointed out by another critic, and I think this is something cool and interesting about the movie, we don't really know. There's no backstory given to us about about the Electric Lady, or how she kills, or why she kills, and we don't really have her backstory. We don't, like, oh, she got to be this way because, you know, her parents abused her, or whatever the case may be. The thing is, though, with women, with female serial killers, or women who commit crimes of various kinds, there is this tendency to just see them as sick, as not well. Whereas men who do these things, you tend to see them as just, who cares what happened to them? They're just evil. They don't have any excuse. But with women, it's like, oh, you know, she like, when, and I mean, I'm guilty of this too. I like, when I hear a story about, you know, an elementary school teacher who entices one of her 5th grade students into having sex with her. He basically rapes a little boy. Even though it's not usually phrased that way. But it is rape, or child molestation, or whatever, you know. And most of the time, in situations like that, you kind of think, oh, well, that girl, that lady must be really messed up. She must have had something happen to her that made her want to sexually be with, you know, 12-year-old boys, you know, when she's married, and, you know, all these stories that we hear about female teachers who prey on their students. But if it were reversed, it's just, you know, if it's a man doing the same thing to a female student, it's just like, oh, what a terrible person, what a creep, what a bastard. And there's not as much about, oh, he must be sick, this must have happened to him, that must have happened to him. We don't tend to think that way, but we tend to you know, I don't know if the word is infantilize. That was the first word that came to mind. I'm not sure if that's the correct word. We tend to, when women do terrible things, we tend to say, oh, well, they're not well. They're obviously messed up. Something must have happened to them to make them this way. And the thing is, that's probably true about a lot of, not just women. That's probably true about a lot of people who do terrible things. They probably had some kind of trauma that helped to make them into monsters. But we do all have the choice, you know, regardless of what our proclivities are. We all do have choices. It's interesting how, you know, even if you're not a feminist, even if you're an anti-feminist, even if you're scornful of feminism, you still do tend to, I think that a lot of probably conservative, traditional sort of people would still tend to see women differently, would tend to see women treat a female criminal with kid gloves much more than they would a male criminal. So, in this movie, the serial killer played by the woman, who, I don't know the actress's name, but she knows the way that it looks when again, when a woman is looking like a victim, looking victimized, and she takes advantage of people's reactions to help win their sympathy over, and she tells them stories about what the guy did to her as if he were the aggressor. And we had been thinking all along that was the case, because that was the first thing we saw, was him chasing after her, and her running away looking terrified. So, so this is a really gutsy movie. This is a movie that really dares to say, women do bad things too, you know, we don't acknowledge it, or we never. It's like it's when this twist happens, it's shocking to the viewer when we find out. Okay, yeah, this is a movie about a serial killer, but they never told us who the serial killer was. They never identified whether the serial killer was a man or a woman. We just thought, after that bit at the beginning, that preamble at the beginning, and then seeing this man chase after this woman with a looking like a maniac, holding a huge gun and terrorizing her. You know, we just thought, okay, he must be the serial killer. She must be his victim. So it'll be interesting. I think if this movie gets, there's a little bit of buzz about it now, and I think it deserves to be seen because it's a very well-made movie, and it'll be interesting to see if there is eventually a controversy over it. You know, even this movie though, like as gutsy as it is, as bold as it is, it doesn't quite go all the way because this is a spoiler review, so I'm revealing the ending. The way that the serial killer lady gets killed is when she hails a female driver, and this lady is also, it looks like an American Indian or something, but she takes out, the serial killer lady takes out her gun to point it at her, and then the American Indian old lady is packing heat and shoots her. So it has to be, they have to show us a woman killing the woman. Like somehow, if it had been a guy killing her, that would have seemed like, ooh, that would have been too much. Even though she definitely deserved to be killed, given the things that she had done. But the movie doesn't quite go so. But I mean, it's not 1990 anymore. It's not like in Total Recall where Arnie's character shoots Sharon Stone in the head and says, "Consider that a divorce." You know, "Oh, honey, you wouldn't shoot me. We're married." You know, big hole in her forehead. "Consider that a divorce." So yeah, we can't quite go back to 1990 where it was okay to see Sharon Stone get shot in the head because she's a conniving evil bitch. It's still 2024. We still even a red-pilled movie like this has to sort of pull its punches in the end. Anyway, that's a little trifling little thing. It's generally speaking a really good movie, and I recommend that you see it. Although if you've watched this spoiler video, then I'm hoping you already saw it. But maybe this will talk you into seeing it, just to see it play out without just hearing my yakety yakking about it. I don't know. What did y'all think? Did you see it? If so, leave your comment below. Thanks for watching.